Okay, I think we can start. Thank you, everyone, for joining me today. It's a pleasure to see you and some good old friends. I'm Gilad Jaffet, founder and CEO of MyHeritage, and today I will share with you some exciting new products and features coming up from this wonderful team that I have here. This year is very special for us because in just 2 months we will celebrate 20 years for MyHeritage. Thank you. It's been a wild ride, 20 years since I started the company from my home and promised my wife it will be a one-man company and that she will see me a lot. But it's been wonderful, and I've been requested to remind you to turn off mobile phones, please. And you are welcome to leave excellent feedback after the session in the Rootstick mobile app. Okay, we have a packed agenda. I'll start with something personal. Then I will describe a very cool feature that we recently released, followed by 2 new features that have been announced and released this week at Rootstack, and then 2 more that are coming up soon. So let's get started. Those of you who know me, they know that I am a genealogist like you. I've started at the age of 13. That was many decades ago. And I started MyHeritage out of my own passion for genealogy. And I wanted to develop better tools and technology for all the users out there. I love talking about MyHeritage, but when I have an opportunity to do so, I usually include a warm-up story, something personal, something that comes from my own personal research, which I keep on doing in my spare time that is scarce. So today will be no different, and I hope my story will inspire you in your own family history research. And so this is also a tribute to my dear father, Gideon Jaffet, who passed away 10 years ago. And of course, I knew him extremely well. But this genealogical discovery that I will share with you is about him and about his early years. And as you know with genealogy, there's always something new to discover. You never know everything. Here, I'm showing some of my favorite photos of my father taken throughout his life. I collect them on MyHeritage so that I can share them with my family members. As a good son, I digitize all his documents and scan them and upload them to MyHeritage. And recently, I've been scanning some documents that I haven't handled before. They are lovely. They are student cards that come from his studies in Versailles in France in 1950 until 1952. So I was scanning them and enjoying, and isn't he handsome and dashing? Yeah. But as a genealogist, of course, I always pay attention to the small details. And here I discovered something interesting. My father, throughout his entire life, went by the name of Gideon Jaffet, and he spelled the name Jaffet like I do. But in France, perhaps he thought that he wouldn't be able to read it properly, and he chose a different spelling of Yefet. And that I found on those student cards. And that was very interesting for me. And you know, it got me curious. And I thought, maybe there is some information in France on somebody called Gideon Yefet. I've never looked for that before. So I try something, and I start dancing. Actually, I didn't dance, I shouted, but everybody could hear it. So what happened was I plugged the name Gideon Yefet in quotes in Google, and it told me there aren't many great results, but there were 2 awesome results. And I was shocked, and they were coming from France, and they were coming from an archive that I never heard of. So this led to a discovery of this archive, archives.jdc.org. It belongs to a Jewish humanitarian organization founded in 1914 that I haven't heard about. And it so happened that inside I found his application to the school in Versailles from 1950, hand-signed by him with his picture and an essay that he wrote on why he should be accepted. that was quite amazing, and I didn't know all these details. I mean, I knew he went to France, but I didn't know all the juicy parts. And 48 more documents and letters. Now, there were some hair-raising surprises in there. Quite amazing things. So a little bit of background. I knew the background, but didn't know the details. So it turns out that my father went to France to study social work. Now, why would he ever want to do that? Because his father, my grandfather, Chaim Jaffet, was one of the founders of social work in Israel, together with Henrietta Salt. So my grandfather wanted his son to be just like him, and kind of pushed him to go to the best school that was in France at the time and study social work. And I was so lucky that the JDC archived the entire student records of all the students. There weren't that many. And that's what I discovered in there. This is a picture of my father celebrating Passover with the other students in Versailles in 1951. So that was the background. And what I learned from all these documents and letters, that actually he applied in 1949 and was rejected. They told him, you don't know French, you have no relevant background, you're not accepted. We have many better candidates. And to my shock, my father went at his own initiative and just showed up in France in 1950. He just showed up with all his chutzpah, and they're saying, what are you doing here? Okay, since you're already here, we'll get you some job near Grenoble. You can teach Hebrew to Jewish children that were displaced after World War II, and you'll learn French, and you'll get experience in social work. So after 3 months, he became fluent in French. He had good experience working with children, and he reapplied, and he got admitted. We never knew all of that, especially not the chutzpah part. But I'm actually quite proud of him. Now, if it were not for this turn of events, I would not have been born. My heritage would not have existed. You would not be in this room right now. So it's all part of this karma. Now, truth is, he didn't like social work so much. After 1 year, he quit. He went to study law in Sorbonne. He became a lawyer. The rest is history. But without this entrance into France, none of that would have happened. So the takeaways, spelling is very challenging. It's a blessing and a curse for genealogists. But if you find some variant that is relevant, you should attack it, because there could be records that you have never thought about finding using that spelling variant. Now, I like the analogy that historical records are like a river, and the river wants to get to the ocean. The records want to be digitized, and they want to end up online. And they will. It's a question of time. So if you search for something, you don't find it, wait a bit. It will find its way to the internet. And Google is a very good friend. Now, MyHeritage is awesome. There are other very good websites, but they're not going to have everything. So you always need to remember that the wild internet is a very good place to search, always. Never stop searching. You'll never know what you will find. And always be curious. So, I didn't want my mother to be upset that I told the story only about my father. So I'm adding a little extra bonus here. A personal story number 2, but a very short one. So 2 months ago, MyHeritage published an amazing collection of historical records, the Israel immigration lists. It's exclusive. We indexed it. It does not exist anywhere except on MyHeritage. And it includes, it's like the Ellis Islands, so to speak, for Israel. It includes a lot of the people who immigrated to Israel, most of them by ships from 1919 onwards. I believe that every Jewish genealogist is going to find treasures in this collection. I met yesterday the CEO of JewishGen, and he told me how excited he was to find his own grandfather. And this information was never online, was never digitized, so people don't know, and I didn't even know, the exact dates and ships in which my 4 grandparents arrived in Israel, and we made this collection free for everyone. So that is an awesome collection, and it's one of quite a few that are only found on MyHeritage. Of course, when we publish something like this, I cannot resist the temptation to look for my own ancestors in there. But You know, the records are mostly in Hebrew, but a lot of people, even Jewish genealogists, they can no longer read or write Hebrew. So we developed global name translation technology, allowing you to search it in English or Greek or Russian or Ukrainian, and it will find the records in Hebrew for you and transliterate. And that means that you can always search in English on MyHeritage, and you can find records in no matter what language they are in. So I searched the collection, and I found a 1926 immigration record of my great-great-grandmother Sarah Henya Chvoinik, coming to Israel together with my great-aunt. And that was a wonderful discovery, which I shared with my mother, Sarah, who is named after her. And it was so sweet to find this. Now I'm going into business. So first I'm going to describe the AI time machine. That was a fun feature that allows you to transform yourself to a historical figure using everyday photos. And the team liked my results, so they used them to promote that feature. Over the past 3 years, we've had a love affair with artificial intelligence. A lot of the amazing features that we released around enhancing photos were done with AI, colorizing photos, improving their focus, restoring faded colors, repairing scratches, deep nostalgia, which animates people in photos, and also the AI time machine. But the AI time machine is a twist because it allows you to reimagine yourself as one of your ancestors. And this is Tal Ehrlichman from my team. I loved his photos so much that I use them. He's over here. So how does it work? It uses text-to-image technology. You upload a bunch of photos of yourself, and it creates a model. Then it applies the model on themes that we created in advance. For genealogists, I created thoughtful themes, like middle-aged astronomer and Renaissance scholar, because all of us love to think of ourselves as such people and not so much the warriors, although we're all Greek gods. So we thought of the themes that we wanted to create for you, and we created about 100 of them, which is quite fun. And these are some of the results. My family had a lot of fun with these. And women often get gorgeous results. This is Ori from our design team. So you go to the AI time machine page, you upload between 10 to 25 photos. The more you upload, the better the results are going to be. Mostly selfies of yourself, but it's good to have some angles and some diversity. And avoid hats and glasses and things that are they might appear. I mean, a Greek god with glasses is kind of a bit weird. And then after a brief while, you get your results and you can enjoy them. We create all the results for you, and you just click each one of the themes and just enjoy the results. And we've created about 100 themes in 2 categories: time travel, which are historical figures, and avatars, which, to be honest, just make you beautiful. But you view the results as, sorry Tal for using so much of you. You view your results as a collage or single images, and then you quickly download and share them on social media to delight your friends and family. We've received a lot of love from the genealogy community. Please take a picture of Roberta here. She's starring. And Randy Seaver, I'm sorry that he's not here with us this year, but he had a lot of fun with this. He just could not stop. His Facebook profile photo is still from the AI time machine. So this was important for genealogy because it was another fun way to introduce people to history and get them interested in their own ancestors and family history. A lot of people commented on how suddenly their image reminds them of their grandparent and got them thinking about their ancestors. And we've had a lot of new interest in genealogy, and on MyHeritage, 36 million photos were uploaded in just 2 months, which is quite incredible. And so if you have used it, you can try again with your spouse or loved one. You can check out the new themes that we've added. So even if you have experienced it, you can try it again and have a lot of fun. So we have to cater to professionals like you, but also we want to bring new audiences at young people, and young people connected really well to the AI time machine. Now for some more serious business. So I hope that the majority of you are avid DNA users, and DNA testing is wonderful. I personally think that the most important aspect of DNA testing is getting matches and discovering relatives. I don't love the ethnicity part that much. And that's why MyHeritage has put a focus on the matching. And we are launching a lot of tools like the auto-clustering, the chromosome browser, and we are always thinking about how do we make DNA matches more powerful, more useful, and easier to use. DNA matches have a very serious problem, however. How am I related to these people? You get hundreds and thousands of matches, and it's not clear how you're related because you share DNA that you got from a common ancestor, and the amount of DNA and some other parameters will indicate how close you are to this other person. But then there could be many possible relationships between you. So today, until now, the type of relationship that a DNA match told you was very vague and not useful. Like, this guy is your second to fifth cousin. Not very useful. Because people didn't know how they were really related to the matches, they were blocked from really gaining most of the value from the matches, unless you find a parent. But if it's someone like a second cousin or third cousin, DNA test doesn't really tell you what this is. And we sought to improve this, and this is why we released the CM Explainer yesterday. This is a game changer. This is a huge improvement in understanding DNA matches. It will predict the relationship that you have with any DNA match on MyHeritage with probabilities in very high accuracy. Now, it's great if you're on MyHeritage because it will work automatically for all your existing matches and you don't need to do anything or change anything. And if your DNA is not yet on MyHeritage, but you have tested elsewhere, you're welcome to upload your DNA data to MyHeritage and get free DNA matches. But we've also made it into a standalone tool. Now, this is a free feature. All these excellent relationship predictions are free. And we've developed a free standalone tool for the CM Explainer that you can use even to understand a match that you got on another DNA service. You don't need to upload. And the standalone service, you don't even need to sign up. You just go to myheritage.com/CM, and CM stands for centimorgan. It's the unit of genetic distance that characterizes how close you are to that match. So the CM Explainer is useful if you're on MyHeritage, and it's also very useful if you're not on MyHeritage and you just want to understand the DNA match better. Now, I can go on the amazing advantages of the CM Explainer and why is it so good. But I'm short on time, so I will try to make it brief. First of all, and most importantly, it gives the predictions based not only on the centimorgan value, but also on the ages. Age is something that you should know for yourself, and MyHeritage knows it for your DNA match, because you give the birth year when you sign up to MyHeritage, unless you chose to keep it private, which is rare. And even if you get a match outside of MyHeritage, you can get in touch with that other person, and if you're lucky and they respond, you can ask them for their age. Once you put the ages, the predictions become much, much better. I'll give you an example. If you have about 25% shared DNA with someone, it could be your grandparent, it could be your grandchild, it could be a half-sibling, it could be your uncle, it could be your nephew. There are too many possibilities. But if the match is about your age, it's not going to be your grandfather, it's not going to be your grandson, and it's likely going to be a half-sibling, and it could rarely be an uncle or a nephew, because sometimes they are going to be your age, but very rarely. So the ages, and that's just one example, can help eliminate anything that is unlikely and give also weights and probabilities to things that are more or less likely. The ages are super important. The relationships that CM Explainer gives you are one directional, they're not reciprocal. It's not going to say uncle or nephew, it's just going to say uncle. And it's gender aware, so it's a female match, it's going to say it's your aunt. If you're British, it's your aunt. So it tells you exactly what the match is, and you know how it is that Steve Jobs decided not to support Flash, and he took credit for removing this technology from the world. So I take personal credit for trying to eliminate first cousin once removed and all these horrible, thank you, horrible ambiguous relationship. Because the first cousin once removed, it can be a first cousin of your parent, and it could be a child of your first cousin, and second cousin 3 times removed can be 2 things. And why do we need ambiguity? It's the worst thing to have in genealogy. So the CM Explainer eliminates and gives you exactly what it means. It can be your father's cousin, a parent's cousin, a cousin's child. It will use those terms and will rule out the one that doesn't make sense because of the ages. So gone are these, and I hate most of all the abbreviations like 1C, 1R. We are human. Why should we deal with those abbreviations that you see all over the place in others? So here with the CM Explainer, it is built for power users and it is built for amateurs. So it just tells you what the relationship is, and you get it. And I insisted to my team, get rid of these ambiguous relationships. I don't want to see them. By the way, I was very personally involved in the ideation of this feature. And I want to give credit to Larry Jones. He invented a tool called CM Solver. MyHeritage saw it, liked it, licensed the technology that he built exclusively, worked with him to build together something much, much better. So in fact, what you see here is very different from the original CM Solver, but without Larry Jones, it would not have been possible. So we made all these improvements. For every relationship, we give you its probability. We don't cluster many relationships in one bucket and give the bucket a probability. And we give you a diagram that will show all the possible relationship with the percentages. And there is something valuable, MRCA, Marca, call it any nickname you like. The most recent common ancestor with a DNA match, it can be 2 people if it's a full relationship, a full blood relationship, 1 ancestor if it's a half relationship. We give you, in the CM Explainer, what is the likely MRCA of you in the match. So you know whether to look for a shared great-grandfather, for example, or more or less, with probabilities. On top of that, the MyHeritage science team developed a brilliant age algorithm that figures out what could be the age difference between any 2 people who are related. The 2 building blocks of this are the age difference between a parent and a child and full siblings. Once you have that calculated, then you can extrapolate. And between you and, let's say, your second cousin, there are certain steps of going to a parent, going to a sibling. So you extrapolate this and you get probabilities for age differences, which are then fed into the CM Explainer to rule out certain relationships or give them different weights according to the ages. This is a very interesting graph. I bet you haven't seen anything like it. This is the difference between siblings, because if there are twins, same. If not, they could be maybe 9 months apart and a bit of change, but they're not going to be 5 months apart unless you have an error in your family tree. If they are full siblings, of course. Half siblings can be anything. And you can see at the bottom, for example, in the green color, the age difference between you and a parent's first cousin. And you can see that actually it can be quite a spectrum, because your parent's first cousin could be potentially your age, very, very rare, usually older, but it can be even 7 years older in some cases, because of the age difference between siblings and the ages in which a parent will have a child and so on. So this age algorithm was constructed from looking at millions of family trees and then used for powerful, accurate predictions of the CM Explainer. So how does it look? And I hope the screens are clear enough. There is a new terminology of probable relationship. In the past, this is the list of DNA matches. We used to write estimated relationship, and we would write a range that was not useful. Now you're going to see one, or sometimes two, if there are two relationships and not a great difference between them. So you see the most probable relationship, and you can click it. And when you do, you get a nice pop-up with all the possible relationship and their probabilities. And here, for example, for this example, 219 centimorgan, and the ages involved, it tells me 85% second cousin. You know exactly what you need to work with. And this is the first time that you get such a prediction on any tool, anywhere, or on any DNA product. When you step and drill down into a match, this is a page called the Review DNA match page. The possible relationships appear there at the top. Of course, they're free, nothing is hidden. And you can then click to see a diagram. The diagram is very nice. This is not your tree. It symbolizes the relationship with the DNA match and where the DNA match is with the percentage numbers on top. So you can see where to find that relative most likely. Half relationships can be complicated, so to simplify, you can tell us if you want to see only full relationships, only half relationships, or both. If you want to go with both, it looks like this, and the half relationships will appear here with a different color, so you can differentiate, and all the numbers will add up to 100% of probability. So this gives you a lot of insight about each match. And if you turn on this box called Show Probabilities for MRCA, the most recent common ancestors, it will sum up and it will tell you for each generation what are the probability that this is the generation of the most recent common ancestor between you and the match. In this case, great-grandparents with 93% probability. So you know exactly when you work with a DNA match and you try to marry their family tree and connect it to yours, you know exactly where it should be. Sometimes the MRCA is a different generation to you than your DNA match. So when we say great-grandparent, it is to you. And to the match, it could be different. This is the standalone tool, myheritage.com/cm. Please commit it to memory and use it whenever you have a DNA match that you want to learn more about. You come in here, you enter the centimorgan value and the ages. You don't have to add the ages. But if you know the ages, you will get much better results. Any tweak to the age, you will see the probabilities begin to change because it's a very accurate and scientific tool. And you don't even need to sign up. It's free and anonymous. I have a lot of respect for a tool called the Shared CM Project. This is a tool that until now I've been using hundreds of times. It's a tool that does also prediction or analysis of relationships of DNA matches. And I think that CM Explainer now does a better job. Here are two examples. If you put in 1600 centimorgan and the certain ages, so MyHeritage gives you half sibling at 93% probability. The Shared CM Project gives you 100% probability to 6 or 7 different relationships. All those that I mentioned with a 25% similarity, that leaves you confused. Another example is with 500 centimorgan. That's a pretty close match. And I only entered one person's age as 27. The other age is not known. But it is a helpful clue for MyHeritage. Because MyHeritage knows that if you're 27 and there's one generation gap, it's unlikely that the other person who's tested is 7 years old. And it points MyHeritage into the right direction. So MyHeritage here gives it a parent's first cousin with more than 70% probability. And the Shared CM Project gives you very confusing results, like 90% for great aunt, uncle, 1C, 1R, half 1C, half this and that, and you're lost. I want to emphasize that the shared CM project is still useful, and sometimes you may want to have a second opinion. It has a different model, a different way of looking at things, and it is an excellent product as well. But to summarize, CM Explainer, available to you since yesterday, is a huge improvement for DNA matches. This is a fundamentally important feature. It's free. Please remember that it gives you a suggestion. Don't treat it as kind of proof. Don't think that if the CM Explainer said that this is a first cousin, then it has to be so. Always be skeptical and verify it with other additional means. It's not proof. Now, it's also not a perfect tool. It's a model with probabilities. It can sometimes be wrong. It is something that we're going to improve. Our team, we just couldn't get it ready enough, has an even improved model than this that also is using the number of shared segments that you have with the match into an AI model with a centimorgan value and the ages, and that is phenomenal and even better than this, but we couldn't get it ready on time. So probabilities are something that will always be fine-tuned. It will never be decisive and final, and we hope in the future to improve the model and the probabilities. CM Explainer, unfortunately, doesn't perform well when there is endogamy and pedigree collapse, which means that you and the DNA match have multiple ancestors that are shared, and you have in common more DNA than you were supposed to. For example, if your two grandparents were cousins who married, then you have less ancestors above them because it collapses, and you have more DNA in common with matches that are descendant of those ancestors, because you got more DNA than you were supposed to from those ancestors. So for Ashkenazi Jewish users and their matches, CM Explainer is probably going to give you a relationship that's closer than the real one, because you probably have with your match a lot of shared centimorgan, and therefore it's not well equipped for this scenario. If you think there is some intermarriage or some pedigree collapse in the areas with you in the match, take that into account when you review your CM Explainer results. But other than this scenario, the results are brilliant, and we compared it with the theory of family relativity confirmed theories. And we did that on hundreds of thousands of theories, and we got excellent confirmation that our predictions are very good, even for distant relationships. Okay, so that was for DNA, and now we have to give something also to the family tree users among us, hopefully all of you. So here, we have added something really neat, color coding for family trees, to make family trees easier to use and more beautiful as a bonus. So what is color coding? Color coding is an optional feature, of course free. You can use it or not. Most people actually love it and use it, but you can always turn it off or turn it on. And it will colorize the cards on your tree in a different color for each one of your ancestral branches. So your father's father will have one color in light blue, and then father's mother in green, and so on with your mother's father and mother's mother's part. And your descendants, direct ones, will be in purple. Turns out there is an industry standard for these colors, so we use them. And since you might forget, we added a legend so that you can quickly summon the legend from the family tree anytime you need a bit of assistance, but quickly it's going to be etched in your brain, and you're going to dream about it like Tetris, bricks falling down. So this is what the tree looks like. On the left side, family view, and on the right side, pedigree view. Because I knew that some people may like it in one of the views and not the other, they are controlled separately. So you can have the pedigree view always do the color and the family view not. Or both will be in color or both will not use them. So two different controls. We have a third view called fan view, And that has the color coding from the start. But we got the colors wrong, so we fixed it now. We got the colors wrong thanks to a group of people called MyHeritage Friends, and we sometimes give them access to features in beta in advance. If you're not on there and you would like to be, let us know. And so we got the feedback from that group that we should follow the standard colors. The functionality to add color coding to trees comes with a few more things. A useful indication of blood relationships. So you're looking at the tree, you're looking at someone, and it quickly tells you with an original icon of 2 blood droplets if this is a blood relatives of yours or not. Now, all these features, the color coding, the indication of blood relationships, have been added also in other people's trees when you go and look. For example, you got a DNA match. It's sometimes exciting to look at the tree. That tree is going to be colored now with a color coding according to the relationship to your DNA match. So you easily see, am I looking at the tree now at the father's father of the DNA match? And if something is not colored, or it doesn't have the blood relative indication, then it's not interesting for you because it's a relative by marriage of your DNA match. So you're looking at someone else's tree, it's color coded. You have a smart match, a match with another tree. You go in to look at the tree, again it's going to be, the nodes are going to be colored according to the relationship to the tree owner. And when you look on the search engine for historical records on MyHeritage, you find a tree profile, you go in, you look at the tree, again it's going to be colored according to the relationship to the tree owner. So once you get in touch with the tree owner, you know what to ask and what part of the tree you're talking about in relation to that user. So all these are very useful features in your own tree and in any other tree on MyHeritage. Questions after? Okay, sorry. Now, we have a very nice relationship diagram that you can click any relationship and see how you're related to that person. Now it works in other trees. You go to a tree of a DNA match, click any person, see how they're related to your DNA match, which is very useful when you're discussing your connection. So all these are like a package of nice features that are labeled color coding, but there's actually more in here. It's free, it makes your tree easier to navigate and more beautiful. Optional, you can have it in one of the views and not the other. It's for your trees of smart matches, DNA matches, tree results, blood relative indication, and just something useful, and we will keep adding useful features for family trees. By the way, after this session, I'm going to be available for hours. If you have any questions, just grab me, and I'll be very happy to answer. The next cool new feature that I will describe is called Photo Dater. This one didn't make it to RootsTech, but it's coming up very, very soon, and we decided to describe it to you. In fact, we had the idea of doing it in the previous RootsTech, and those of you who attended my lunch talk, I described what we're going to do, and it's nearly finished. And what the Photo Dater is a tool to estimate with very high accuracy the date in which a photo that you have was taken, which is quite amazing, because a lot of us inherited a shoebox of old photos, and you turn them around and oops, no inscription, doesn't say when it was taken or who's there. Sometimes you're lucky and there is information, but oftentimes the photos are undated, and because they're undated, sometimes you don't know who's there. Or if it shows a marriage, wouldn't you love a wedding? Wouldn't you love to know when the wedding took place? So dating photos is super, super valuable, and this feature uses artificial intelligence to do that. So again, I will use some photos of Tal. And so pop quiz, what year was this photo taken? All of you can take an educated guess by looking at how faded the colors are. This is chemistry. And I hear 76. And you look at the ties and the hairstyles, and it maybe leads you to the beginning of the 80s. So we'll get to that, but here's another challenge. This seems to be older. You can throw some guesses around.
60s.
Okay, I heard 50s over there. We will soon find the answer. So you feed these into, you just upload photos on to MyHeritage and the magic happens automatically. Photo data is built into MyHeritage. It's exclusive. There's nothing like it. It tells you the year in which the photo was taken. I apologize that we're not giving you the day and the month. Not yet.
It's coming.
What I love about it is that it gives you a histogram with decades, so that even if it's off, you'll know where to look. Like if it's not 1963, it's probably not the 50s, this photo, but it looks like it might be early 70s. So the decade histogram tells you where to focus. It tells you the confidence level and the average error for this guess. So it tells you that 1963 and plus minus 5 years. That's pretty good. It doesn't always work. When it cannot estimate in sufficient confidence, it's just not going to give you a guess. But most of the time, it will. And how did we do this? We took a huge number of photos that the dates were known. And then we trained it on the known photos. And then it picked up the signals. The AI picked the signals of the hairstyle, the clothing, the objects. That could be some plant pot in the background of the picture, but it knows that this is from the 1970s. So it will do that. In some studios, there was a wooden podium, and a person was photographed, and it knows the styles of these podiums. It probably will recognize some photo studios in Eastern Europe from all the training that we did. So this is how smart it is. Going back to this photo, photo data says 1982. Reality is 1982. Not bad. Well, you're saying Tal cherry-picked those photos, and that's true. But so on Tal's grandparents, photo data says 1955, and I heard the 50s over there, but it's actually 1956. Not too bad. And maybe, I hope it's January 1956. So how does it look inside MyHeritage? Now, this is a very scientific thing. I don't want to mess between facts and theories. So it's not going to appear as a fact. It's going to appear as a suggestion. It appears as an estimation with a magic wand that says that it's AI, only if you did not date the photo yourself. Because if you did, it's not going to try to contradict you. It appears there, and you can click it and get the histogram and all the other information. And then, if you trust it and you like it, you can save it to your tree. And then it goes into the metadata of the photo. When I started MyHeritage nearly 20 years minus 2 months ago, the first thing I did was to actually code GEDCOM import, because a family tree website needs trees, and the trees existed outside of MyHeritage at the time. And I remembered that a date in GEDCOM can be circa, can be before something, after something, between this and that, but it can also be an estimated date. So when you save this, it follows the GEDCOM format, and it is saved as an estimated year. So you even remember that this was an estimation, and is not a solid. But once you do some research and you find, you can change the estimation to a solid one. Thank you. Genealogists appreciate accuracy, and I love it. So Tal gave me a few more to try with. This is Tal himself at a young age. Photo data says 1988. Reality is 1988. Now he had to resort to my family tree for some older photos. So this one, photo data says 1907. Reality 1906. It's not bad. And this interesting photo data says 1935. It is from 1936. So this is a very, very useful tool. Will work for all the photos that you have on MyHeritage. Please upload those that are not yet on MyHeritage and put them there. And I will have soon something to show you to make it easier, but we'll get to that. To summarize, it's coming up really soon. It just missed barely RootsTech. It's based on artificial intelligence. It guesses the year. The estimate is kept separately from the photo metadata. It will give you a good idea on when the photo was taken. And if the photo has a child and you can see that the child looks like they're 5 years old, the year plus the estimated age gives you a birth date of the person. It's wonderful. My dream is to allow you to sort your collection of photos on MyHeritage chronologically by year, which is something impossible today for historical photos, but will be possible now. That would be awesome. Thank you so much.